Boardroom, Chapter 9, 4500 BC. The two lay back on the soft white satin sheets, their bodies limp from passion. The warm mist was gently being eased out of the huge windows that perfectly framed the violet hues of yet another sunset on Orion. The two stared away from each other's eyes toward the window and then toward the ceiling filled with murals. The musky aroma of love was wafting upward. And yet the tranquil scene was anything but. The pair's gaze presently returned to one another's eyes, and their love flowed from one to the other, but the happiness that always accompanied this supreme act of love was not to be found. The tears in both their eyes completely obscured it. "Why don't you let them?" Spirit asked, interrupting the endless silence. After another eternity, the response was whispered, "What? Why don't you let them decide?" "Wouldn't be right," he said, turning to look at the window to avoid her sweet gaze. She took his head in her delicate feminine hands and drew his head back until their eyes met again. "What would be wrong about it?" "It just would be. They are created beings. They are my subjects. They are my responsibility. They must do what I command. If not, there would be utter chaos. Yet," she put both index fingers to his lips, "but they love you. They respect you." That was all programmed. He shook his head. He had never been in such a state of despair. He truly saw no way out. "You may have programmed them, but you cannot obligate them to love you. Sure, they serve you without question, but they don't have to like it." "Yet, honey, to a man, woman, and child, they do. They all do. Every one." "I'm not so sure about that." "They do. I know they do. You gave them the freedom to think. They're not like animals and birds. They serve without question. They love without question. Every puppy dog in every corner of this and all the other universes love their master without question." He shook his huge bearded head. It always took on a gray hue when he was worried or troubled. It always gave him away. "Where did I go wrong? These are wonderful creatures. I love them all like my own son, yet they plot against me daily." She rose up, leaned forward, and cradled his head in her huge warm breasts. This never failed to relax him except for tonight. After what seemed an eternity but was only 10 minutes, his whimpering softened, then changed into a sound of sleep. She would hold him this night in her feminine, sleepless arms. He would have to let them decide. She knew it. He knew it. She was confident every last angel would support, honor, and love their Creator. She had been present at the creation of each one. How could they not always love and honor the one who gave them life in the first place? But as this thought trickled through her brain, she knew he didn't think so. Bells was the most outspoken rebel, but there were others. She just knew that when push came to shove, they would all see it the right way, his way. She didn't know what would happen if they didn't. "Didn't what?" she thought aloud. She wished the thought out of her mind, but it kept on creeping back in. What would happen to the rebels? She didn't like the word, but it was the only one she could think of that fit. They chose their own way. She didn't know what would become of them, but she was suspicious that her husband did. Tears now began to stream down her face. They formed a salty pool in the triangle formed by her cleavage and his head. She finally surmised he would just eliminate them, wipe them out. The tears began to run in a steady stream now. He snorted occasionally as some of the salt water ran into his nostrils, but he slept on. She knew he had many a sleepless night recently. He was wearing down. She vowed she must help him. She now vowed she would. But she too was at a loss. He couldn't just eliminate them. The others would not stand for it. The remaining angels would always live in fear. All beings would wonder who would be eradicated next. She surmised that plan would not work. But what then? Maybe a court, criminal court. The jury could at least be in part angelic. What if they found in favor of the defendants? The judge, the Father's own power, would be eroded for eternity. He would have to eliminate all angels and start from scratch, start over. But the entire universe would still wonder. All the pets would love their masters. No, that would never do either. She now dozed for about an hour, but the terrible quandary soon revived her tired mind. Finally, she came up with the fact that someone would have to demonstrate to all the angels in the universe that their way was the only way, that any other approach would always end up in complete chaos and destruction of all life. The difficulty would be in how to show all the beings that there was only one way, that of order. It did not take her long to come up with the answer. He must create a new line, a new type of being, also with the power to choose. But what kind of being? Like angels? Well, yes, but with full freedom, freedom to choose. He had created races of beings in the past, but they had not been like he and she. They had been of various designs and types with varying intelligences, and all had remained loyal. But she wondered what this new line would choose. The answer was that this new line of beings should choose her husband as their god. She was now warming to the idea. Yes, a super race of angels, but in a separate place. A society that could develop on its own and choose God rather than themselves. They should have the ability to understand the workings of God and that the universe would not work without him. Surely a super race of angels with even more insight than the current crop would certainly get it right. It would be obvious to the new race and the current race that God is and should be God. She began to conjure up all sorts of designs for this new bloodline. Her husband was the creator, the power behind all things. But she was the master designer, the artist. She brought the unique beauty to all his creation. She spent the next hour sending idea after idea spinning through her fertile mind. She came to the conclusion that the neatest design would be to create a race of miniature gods. The beings should look exactly like he and she, but on a much smaller scale. Her elation grew as her thoughts multiplied, but suddenly she shrank back in horror. Tears again welled in her platinum eyes. What if they're... No, they wouldn't. But the angels... No, this new line would be better. But her heart sank again. If this newest line had more insight than the present angels, those already in existence would cry foul, and with good reason. Her heart sank deeper into the pit of depression her husband was in, as she realized the awful truth. There is only one way to convince any being of any kind that God's way, his way, her way was the only way, the happy way, the right way, she whispered. As first light illuminated the reflection of her weepy eyes in the salty pool formed by her breast and his head, the realization of what must happen in the not-too-distant future caused her to tremble uncontrollably. The tiny rivulets distorted her dejected reflection in the salty pool. As exhaustion finally overtook her again, the terrible little words clung to the whisper emanating from her precious lips. They must see chaos.